How much money did you spend on doing this video?
I hope the people at Amazon aren't watching this because I spent a little over $1,500, but hold on. But the most expensive portion of that were the 4 costumes that I bought for mascots. And because they were gently used and they didn't fit right, I returned them to Amazon.
Attaboy. That was Brandon Gaudin, and this is On the Bench with Mike Hall. That's me. Brandon Gaudin is our network's lead football play-by-play voice. And though he is only in his 30s, he's already grown to a nationally relevant announcer. He calls NFL games on Fox. He calls Major League Baseball games on Fox. He calls plenty of men's basketball games on our air. And what many people know him for is he is the play-by-play announcer on the popular Madden video games. Brandon has taken a steady rise through the industry over the years, from graduating from Butler to announcing at Butler, then Georgia Tech, then rising to all those national gigs I just mentioned. And what I love about him personally is he is a humble, down-to-earth, good dude. Kind, patient, helpful, ego-free, and on top of all that, a really fun guy, which you'll hear right away because my first question to him was asking for his best awful moment as an announcer. Basically his best, uh-oh, did I just say that moment?
Best screw up was probably at the women's basketball MVC tournament back in 2009 in St. Charles, Missouri. Evansville Aces playing the Illinois State Redbirds. Evansville was the 9 seed, Illinois State was the 1 seed, and Evansville somehow shocked the world. They were up by 5 late, waning seconds of the game, and they were going to the free throw line to essentially ice it and get the big victory and move on to the semifinals. Well, I don't even know if this is kosher to tell, but we'll just keep going. And the young lady that goes to the line is named Stephanie Bamberger. She was known for being a very clutch player. This is who you wanted at the line. And what I was trying to articulate over the air is that Stephanie Bamberger is the one that you want to have the ball in her hands late. But what I said was Stephanie Bamberger likes to have balls in her hands late. And at that point, what happened was myself and the analyst, Tom Benson, essentially went 30 seconds of being off the air because we both hit our mute buttons and we were dying laughing. My face was beet red. And so while Stephanie hit the free throws, nobody knew what was going on because I wasn't saying a darn thing. And I apologized to Stephanie afterwards, told her to please pass my apologies on to her family as well. So, there you go. There you go. I'm not really a swear or anything. So thankfully I haven't had any of those moments, but that was just one of those, oh my gosh, I just said that she likes to have balls in her hands. That's not good.
Which you were talking about basketball. Let's be very clear. That's accurate. That's all it was.
Yeah.
All it was. I remember having Kugler do a bit for me for the old Sports Light, the late night show that we had years ago. And the premise was like, he just started screaming at Crispin. Like that was just, he's such a nice guy. I was like, oh, here's a bit that you just lose yourself on Crispin. And he did it and he dropped like 8 F-bombs, but he always said forking. And I was like, I told him, I was like, we were going to bleep it anyways. He was like, no, I know. And I trust you guys. There's that possibility that somehow that audio, even though it's a joke, leaks out and somebody doesn't get it. And I was like, yeah.
He's well-trained.
He's a vet.
I would not do it either. That's a good man, Kevin Kugler.
Yeah. See, that's a good thing with Madden, right? When you're voicing that, you can screw up any way you want and you get a redo.
Yeah, but you still are being recorded, right?
Right. Yeah.
Just like this Zoom is being recorded. So our engineer for Madden, his name is Kyle Bird, and he actually has a folder on his desktop called Never to Be Heard. And it's our look, and I mean this when I say this, there's nothing on there that's really truly incriminating, right. But there's stuff on there that could never go on the game in a million years. There's some lines that came out inappropriately that shouldn't have come out inappropriately. And so sometimes, and we haven't been in Orlando since the pandemic started, that's where they film. That's where they record and make the game. But we used to on Mondays sometimes, Charles, who's the analyst, and I, we would sit down with the engineer, Kyle Burt, and we would just play some of those old lines from the first couple of years, just to relive some of the good memories and laughs. So I'm sure there's a lot on there that I just hope never gets released. We'll just say that.
Right. I'll try to find it and see if I can release it for us.
I'll send you Kyle's email.
So let's dive in a little bit on Madden. You replaced Jim Nantz calling that. And I think you told me the story once. Did they reach out to you just on like LinkedIn or something?
Yeah, it was LinkedIn. It was so random. So at the time, this was 2015. I still live in Atlanta, and I moved to Atlanta in 2013 to take a job at Georgia Tech. So I'm in my third season at Georgia Tech, living here in Atlanta. I'm sitting in my office at Tech, and I get an email that pops up. It says it's from LinkedIn, that somebody sent me a message. And I think I had just signed up for LinkedIn 6 months prior to this. So early days of even knowing what it was. I never did anything with it, but I saw the email and I honestly ignored it. I just didn't think anything of it. And a couple days later, I like to keep my inbox clean. So I'm going through, I was like, I need to delete this email. So I deleted it. I was like, I'll go check out what this message is. It's from a lady named Marcy. It says she was the director of talent at EA Sports. And it said, we have an opportunity that we'd like to talk to you about. And I looked at her profile thinking, is this even real? And she was legit. It was real. I said, okay. So I sent her a note back and she said, can we set up a time to talk? So we did. Well, we get on the phone and she says, I can't disclose this opportunity to you without you signing a non-disclosure agreement. And I'm thinking, I've never signed an NDA in my life. And what in the world is so vital and so secretive that you can't just tell me? So I signed the NDA, still again thinking not much of this. And then she put me in touch with the group that oversees Madden. And we got on the phone and they told me, hey, we're going to be moving on from Jim Nantz and Phil Simms. We're doing a nationwide search for our next broadcaster. And one of our producers has heard your work and identified you as somebody that we would like to at least talk to, maybe come in and audition. So I knew at that point, okay, look at the guys who've done it before me, Al Michaels, Jim Nantz, Gus Johnson. I thought, yeah, maybe they would be interested in me, but I would really have to knock this out of the park. So I did end up going down to Orlando for an audition. And I remember meeting everybody and doing the audition. I just thought, you know, that went pretty well. And they seemed to be receptive. I got along great with everybody on the team. We were all about the same age. But I still thought it was a long shot because I knew who else they were bringing in. Well, lo and behold, 3 months after that, I remember it as clear as day. I was getting ready to walk in to play pickup basketball with some friends here in Atlanta. Phone rings. It's a 407 number, and I knew that was Orlando's area code. And I thought, well, here's the call. And they called and said, would you want to replace Jim Nantz and be the voice of Madden? And I said,
no.
Yes, I will. Yeah. I was like, I'm sorry, who is this? Who's Jim Nantz? What?
You're bothering me.
I'm going to play basketball. I'll tell you what, can I pencil you in for a call next Tuesday? So obviously, you know, it's one of those moments. We only get a few of those moments in our life, career-wise, where you're always going to remember everything about that moment. And that's certainly one of those that I'll never forget.
What was the audition like? They have a script you had to read?
Yep, it was mainly scripted. And most of our stuff, people always asked, are you watching the video game when you're calling it? You're not. Most of it is all scripted. So it's very different from obviously going to a football venue or basketball venue and watching the live event and doing play-by-play. This is really more being a voice actor. That's essentially all that you're doing. And the main thing they wanted to see in that audition, Mike, is could you stitch lines together? Because when you play the game, and I know you play it every day, and that's much appreciated. When you play the game, every line is about 6 or 7 seconds, and then the code tells the next line to play and the next line to play. So they're all recorded on different days, different months, but they play back to back to back to make you think that it was all recorded in one fell swoop. So the audition was to see, can this guy record a bunch of different lines? And then when we mix mash them together later, does each line sound like it played back to back to back? He can keep an even tone, know when to get excited, when not to get excited. And it felt like a pretty normal process for me. And thankfully they thought so too. But the audition was 95% just reading script.
So when you're doing it, like, give me an example. Like, is it as short as a phrase, like 1st and 10, or is it more like a full sentence that you'll say?
Yeah, so there's 2 parts to recording it. We call it the 2-man session, where myself and Charles are on together. We had one of those this morning. And those are a little bit different because we can go back and forth, and those lines are usually about 20 to 25 seconds, and they're less scripted. They just give us bullet points. So this morning, we were doing drive starters. So the Cleveland Browns come back out onto the field, and it may say they threw an interception on their last 2 drives, and we just talk, Charles, last 2 times out, they threw interceptions. They've got to clean it up here. And then he'll say something generic, right? But when I'm by myself, we call those solo sessions, and that's just play-by-play. And that's where I'll have 3 columns of lines. And column A might say, Brady back to pass. And column B is throws to the right. And column C is it's caught by Gronkowski. And he's tackled at the 42. It's a gain of 5. Well, everywhere that I pause there is a different line. And then you can mash that together. So it's Brady with a different receiver, a different yard line. And so it kind of becomes, it's almost like it makes you psychotic. You're reading Brady drops to pass, Rodgers drops to pass, and then you go through the receivers and the yardage lines, and you just feel like a robot doing it over and over.
Yeah. How long do the sessions take?
We do typically 2 to 4 hours. They cannot do over 4 hours because what happens is they then have to take all the audio. They have to actually send it over across the pond to somebody, I think in Sweden, that is the editor. So by the time it gets edited and then coded and implemented into the game, if you do over a 4-hour session, there's just too much work for other people. So it's typically 2 sessions a week, about 2 to 4 hours per week.
2 sessions a week?
Yeah. So we usually during the football season, we do every Monday, Tuesday. And so I used to fly down to Orlando. I would take the first flight every Monday morning, and then I would take the last flight back Tuesday night. But since COVID hit, they set up a little recording studio in each of our houses, and we've just been doing them on Zoom. So
that's perfect.
There you go. Makes it easier, and it keeps me off of, I think that's 76 flights that I did in 2019 for Madden, and now I'm down to 0, so that's also helpful. Hasn't helped my dating life, but it has freed up a little bit more time.
Well, it has helped your life a little bit in that you don't have to be in a room with Charles Davis, who's universally known as one of the meanest people in the industry.
Just a bad seed, a horrible seed.
Yep.
No, I mean, you know, and you're joking, but Charles is truly, like, it's cliche to say, oh, nice guy, but one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet.
The best.
He'd do anything for anybody. I've never heard him get angry or yell at people, just always so nice. And he's gone out of his way to not only be good to me as far as the video game is concerned, but beyond that. He always wants to talk on the phone. How can I help you? What can I do for you? Can I introduce you to somebody? Yeah, just one of the nicest guys you'll ever come across.
If you like nice people, I guess that's your thing, but
and
never been.
There's always my call. There's always my call.
It's on my business card. I assume I know the answer to this question, but you never met Madden, have you?
No, never met him. And he is out in California, and the only interaction he has with a game every year, and I give him credit for this because he really doesn't need to have any interaction, is he requests that the Madden team, the producers, go out there before the game is released, and he gives final say-so over everything. So he has before looked at the game like, guys, I don't like this, or I think this is too complicated or not complicated enough. So they go out, they sit in his man cave, and I've seen pictures, but I've never been there. They say it's just unbelievable. Yeah. And he kind of gives his final blessing over the game, and then they just send him an abnormally large check, and he just deposits that.
Hopefully it's an oversized, like a 7-foot wide.
Ed McMahon? Did he used to do the sweepstakes? Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So it's basically, when you come down to it, it really is, like you said, it's more acting. Give me your actual acting resume. I'm talking, we can go back to high school or junior high or commercials or anything.
You know, it's funny. I've never officially done anything. And my family knows this, but not many other people do. That in the back of my mind was always something I was interested in, but it just never came to the forefront because broadcasting was always my focus. Right. I've loved broadcasting since I was 7, and that was number one. But I always thought, man, I love movies. I love TV. I love bits. I love all of that stuff. I love writing. Yeah. And so I just have these creative juices where there's a desire for that. So the cool thing about Madden is I've been able to kind of scratch that itch in a way that I never thought possible. And it's led to some other voiceover opportunities, which has really been neat. But I have never officially done any acting. I've never taken any acting classes. But I do feel after 5, now we're on our 6th year of doing this, like I am much more comfortable pretty much doing any role because of this that I've had to do with Madden. So that's been really an added perk to all of this.
What have been the other VO opportunities, like commercials?
Yep, just a few commercials. There was one for Gatorade. There was one for Intel, one for, I think, the Falcons most recently. So there's just been little opportunities that have come through this that otherwise really probably never would have come. But chances to get in a booth, read a script with a producer or director on the other line. And then what they do in those VOs when I've done those commercials is they let you riff. And I love that. So they'll just say, okay, you read it how we wrote it. Now you go. And I love that. Like, great. Give me 30 seconds. I'll write down a couple notes and boom, let's go.
Yeah.
And we've gotten to do that with Madden too, to where, yeah, they've got some stuff scripted, but then we'll get to some portions where they'll say, all right, do whatever you would do here, however you would say it. And that's a fun challenge that I enjoy trying to master.
And that's when you break out your stand-up material. You're like, what's the deal?
Yeah. All right. What's the deal with airline bathrooms? Yes. Yeah, that's right.
You mentioned that Madden opened doors for different opportunities. Did the Big Ten Network opportunity come before Madden or after Madden?
Strange, Mike. I had 3 opportunities that truly came within 60 days of each other. It was this, and we use these terms a lot and they can seem cliche, but I really was fortunate. Everything came together for me at once. So it was Big Ten Network. Mark Halsey, our boss, had reached out and expressed interest in trying me out on the television side of things, because back till 2016, I had never really done TV. It had just more been of a radio focus. So that came, the Madden thing came, and then Westwood One Radio reached out and wanted me to start doing some games for college football, the NFL, and the NCAA tournament. And so I went from just being focused on Georgia Tech to all of a sudden, boom, 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 I've got these 3 other opportunities. I spoke with all 3 of the employers, and luckily I was able to make it all work there for the first couple of years. And since then, I still do some Westwood One, but it's a majority of the focus now is with BTN and Fox, and then still the Madden video game. But yeah, I feel like these last 5 years, it's been a great journey, and I've been extremely lucky to be on it.
Well, you've done great work too. You've risen to the point where you're a lead football play-by-play man, which is a pretty big deal for a college sports network. And you've called games for basketball and for football for, again, half a decade for us. So give me the most memorable stadium to call a game from the Big Ten perspective.
There's a lot, especially on the football side. There's a handful. I will say one that surprised me that I had never been to, that never disappoints, is Nebraska. The whole game day experience in Lincoln on a Saturday, and I've been there when they've been 3 games under 500. I've been there when they've been 2-0, and there's just been a little excitement. Are we going to get this thing back on track? Regardless of the scenario, the game day atmosphere there is second to none. It's exciting outside the stadium, that whole Haymarket district, the tailgating, everybody's pumped up, they're dressed up, and they sell out every game. It just, that consecutive sellout streak that I think is around 400 now, it just doesn't matter. That is the show in town, not only in Lincoln, but in the state of Nebraska on a college football Saturday. So when people say Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, absolutely. And those do not take a back seat to Nebraska, and I mean that. Those are incredible. But those are the ones people think of. Big Ten fans need to recognize a cool spot that maybe for them is a little under the radar is Nebraska on a Saturday. I don't care who they're playing. I don't care what their record is. You will not be disappointed.
Yeah. Their fans are incredible. When they were in the Big 12 and I was at Missouri, they would take over 40% of the stadium, at least when they would play. I mean, it was unbelievable. Best player you've covered from the Big Ten?
Couple of running backs, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor. I'm trying to think if there's another. I feel like there's probably 1 or 2 more in there. But those are 2 running backs in particular where when I saw them and you look down on the field, you're just like, okay, they're playing chess and everybody else out here is playing checkers. Okay? Mm-hmm. That's kind of what it felt like. In particular, the first time I saw Saquon Barkley, and it was, I think the first game I had of his was Georgia State, and it was like one of the first games where he truly broke out. He had 2 long runs, and it just looked different. The way that he was moving, the way that he was just shoving people out of the way, it's like there's something different about this cat than everybody else. And I remember that with Jonathan Taylor too. So those two guys kind of jumped to the forefront of my mind.
So give me a moment, like the moment that sticks out in your mind most from your years of calling Big Ten games.
I would say one that is a little sad, but it turned into a special moment, I would say, was when Cassius Winston, you remember his brother passed away a couple of years ago. And I had the game the day that his brother passed. And they were playing, I believe, Binghamton. And Cassius Winston shows up at shoot around, and we were there. The announcing crew was there, and we had just gotten the news. And the team was a mess. Obviously, Cassius was a mess. Everybody was just trying to grapple with what had happened, support their teammate. Tom Izzo was in tears. He was trying to support Cassius. The shoot-around had this very strange feel. It was doubtful, obviously, that Cassius would play that night. Well, he wound up playing that night. Not only did he played incredibly. I think he had 11 assists and was just a rock. They had a big victory. They were heavy favorites, but they played inspired basketball, and they did it for him. And he was kind enough to do an interview after. And I just remember how steady he was through all of that. And then Tom Izzo later said after that game, clearly he broke down and it just all kind of hit him. But, he dedicated that game to his brother. And having followed Cassius for all those years that he was there, that's one of my favorite players. Just how he played on the court, but how he carried himself off the court, how everybody rallied around him as a leader. And that game, through tragedy, kind of embodied who he was. And I know that he went through a heck of a day and then a heck of a couple of months after that. But his play on the court was truly inspirational that game and then the couple of months after. And that's something I'll never forget.
Yeah, his play, you pretty quickly realized he would be a special figure in East Lansing for a long time. And it's partly, if not mostly, because of the way he handled himself with the kind of adversity nobody wants to have to handle. Let's get into the weeds on play-by-play. Your boards, every play-by-play person has a board, or some call it other, I don't remember what they call it.
Chart.
A chart. There you go, a chart. You've shown me yours. They're very simple, not in like a lazy or an undone thing, but it's clear, it's clean. You have 3 notes on every player and nothing else, even though there's more room on your board for that. Why do you have it structured that way?
That's how I do it for basketball. And it's also simple and clean for football, but I allow spots for more notes, especially for the quarterback, the star running back, the star wide receiver, people you're going to be talking about more. I allot more space. What I do for basketball is I do the 3 notes that I think are the most important things that I want to pass along to the viewer. And then I have a separate sheet. Well, there are multiple sheets of paper for each team that has bigger stories. If I want to tell the story about a player that can't fit into those 3 bullets, then I've got it on a separate sheet of paper. But I want to focus on the meat and potatoes and not get caught up in the weeds. And that's just how my mind works. Different things work for different announcers. I've seen some boards that are just filled, just maxed out with all of this information. And the way that my brain processes stuff is I typically only need a few words to trigger what I want to say. And so if I've got a story on a certain player and let's say that the star quarterback's got a brother who is, the number 1 recruit in the country and he's going to Ohio State, and I will just put, Brother Pete, Ohio State. And then I will know that that's going to set me up for a story. And I've got more nuggets on my other page if I need to refer to it. Because that simplicity is just what works for me. And I also color code it. So I know, for instance, on my football boards, red is for a quarterback, purple is for a wide receiver, green is for a running back, dark green's for a fullback, so that my eyes just kind of adjust to where they need to go on the paper at any given moment. But, and you've seen them too. Some boards are more complex. Guys have stuff written all over the place. And for them, that's great. For me, that just doesn't work as well. I need a little more order. I guess I'm a little more OCD. But it's a system that I'm continually fine-tuning. Everybody is. And I'm not completely satisfied with where it's at. But I will say that I like it a lot more now than I did 5 years ago.
Yeah, that does seem like a universal theme. Everybody tinkers no matter what.
Always.
When it's football, it might be a day or two before. When it's basketball, it might be the morning of. You get a chance to talk to the coach beforehand. What is your goal when you talk to a coach before a game?
I have specific things that I go into each meeting wanting to talk to the coach about. Well, first and foremost, if it's football especially, you want to get injury updates. Now, sometimes coaches are pretty guarded with that, but that's usually top of mind. I always ask, hey, is there a player that's going to be out there that we haven't seen yet this season that could surprise us? Because sometimes at the college level, you get two wide receivers injured. They're going to play a freshman that they haven't played before, and that can be a big surprise. So is there any guy on offense or defense that we could see that we need to be prepped for? And coaches are usually pretty transparent. They'll say, hey, just for your publication only, yeah, you're going to see this guy, 4-star wide receiver, and that's extremely helpful. And then I typically come in with questions on each of the key players if I'm trying to build a story. So, for instance, I read a story. We've got Wisconsin Rutgers this week for football. I read a story on Ches Malusi, the running back, Clemson transfer, and how he came to be a Wisconsin Badger. And I want to ask Coach Chris about the recruitment of him and how that happened when he entered the transfer portal. So I will try to get a quote from them to support stories that I already have coming in. And then same thing on defense. I want something that the viewer can sink their teeth into. So, okay, Leo Chanel's been playing incredibly well. What has changed with him over the last 5 games where he has gone from here to here? So I try to feed the storylines. I try to put myself in the mind of the fan. If I'm a Badger fan, if I'm a Rutgers fan, what is intriguing me right now? What are they talking about on the message boards? And some people roll their eyes at that, but whatever they're talking about there, that's what the fans are typically interested in hearing more about. So I try to put my mind in the mind of a viewer, a fan of that team when I'm on the phone with those coaches.
Do you take notes when you talk to a coach?
Yeah, I type because I can't write fast enough. So like you and I see the computer behind me, I do that for notes, and the laptop that you and I are on right now, I use for the Zoom. And I know that I can type pretty loudly. So I ask the question, I put myself on mute, and then I start to type really fast. And then when they finish up, I transition back over. And I don't write out everything verbatim, but especially if they're coming up with a specific quote on a player, I don't want to misquote them or use words that they didn't use. So I try to be pretty precise with that.
How much of what we hear in you when you call play-by-play is the real you? And the reason I ask that is one guy who's done it a long time told me once, he was like, yeah, you really choose what type of version of you want to be when you're play-by-play. And I was like, boy, that doesn't ring true at all to me. Like, to me, I think I'm at my best when I'm broadcasting and it's just me. Yeah. And Sean McDonough was on here and he told me that his friends often talk to him and say, how come you're not funny on air? You're so funny in real life. And he was like, well, because that's not my job. And I'm doing my job on there. How much do you think when you're on air how close are you to the real Brandon?
I will say I'm trying to be 100% the real Brandon. And that's always been a thing of mine is don't try to be somebody you're not. And don't try to change. Is my voice bigger on TV? Sure. But don't try to make it a completely different person or try to be a voice that you're not. I really have always focused on not wanting to try to switch that up. I will say, and you mentioned that with Sean McDonough, is something that my friends and family frequently tell me is, and show your personality more. And that's always something that I'm striving to do, is to not be so caught up in making sure that I get this story or this nugget right at the right time, even though I want to do that, but also making sure you're listening to the person that you're working with and having fun with it. Sports is fun. I think one of the reasons people are so enamored, or at least were initially with Tony Romo, was because it was just kind of him having fun in the booth and you felt it at home. And when I'm doing a game, whether it's with James Laurinaitis for football or Bardo or Sean Morris or Robbie Hummel on basketball, my goal here, and it has been the last couple of years, I want to keep moving that forward, is to be fun and enjoy it. And when the right moment, you can't be funny all the time. It's not a stand-up routine. But when the moment presents itself to go back and forth with some good banter, do it. I mean, and again, if it's a 3-point game late and they're driving, yeah, you can't be all comedy, but there are times for appropriate humor to have fun and mix it in with a broadcast. And so that is something that consistently people in my life who know me off air, like, dude, show your personality, man. Live it up a little bit. And I'm trying to do that as I move forward.
Right. Isn't it funny how many things in play-by-play constantly feel like you're working towards it, whether it's you're bored or whether it's personality, you're just constantly tweaking.
And Mike, I said this the other day and I mean it. Like, so this is my 5th or 6th year doing TV broadcasts, whatever it is. I'm trying to remind myself, like, even though you're not 22 anymore, you're also pretty new in this business.
Right.
And if I listen to myself now versus year one, I sound totally different. And I think it's improved. And I want that in 5 more years. And I think it will be there in 5 years. So to your point, I'm always trying to remind myself, there are things to work on them and continue to do it. When you think that you've reached a point where you don't need to work on anything, I think you're lying to yourself. And so that's always my goal, is to figure out what can be better next.
One more sort of in the weeds play-by-play one. So when you're calling football, you're way up high. Some people use binoculars, some watch the monitor. What do you do? And sort of same thing with basketball. How much are you watching live action versus how much are you watching what the monitor is showing?
It's a mix. I think I'm one of the few people that does not use binoculars when I'm broadcasting. I watch the monitor a lot for football. First reason for that is because I want to see what you're seeing at home. And if we are showing a guy on the sideline riding an exercise bike because he just hurt his ankle, I don't want to be looking down on the field assuming that we're talking about the quarterback. Now, some people on TV will respond to that and say, well, that's the director's job to follow what you're talking about. And that's true. But I always want to make sure that I have at least one eye on that monitor. So if something catches me off guard, I need to pay attention to it. And so that's one reason. The other is it's easier to spot off there. And that is identifying the numbers of specific players. Now, you know this, but some people may not. Every football play-by-play announcer in the booth, you have a spotter next to you who is helping identify who made the tackle, who caught the ball, et cetera, on each play, because you are so high up. But I find that even with the spotter helping me, it is best, and I identify it quicker if I just, after the pass is caught, I look down at the monitor. Okay, that's 13, that's Chimere DK, right? And for the tackle too, there's so many guys in there, but if you look at that monitor, it can really help you identify things, because technology has gotten such, man, those cameras are so good. Right. Our picture up in the booth is so crystal clear and it's instant that I really rely on that a lot for not only that, but for basketball too. Now for basketball, since you're down on the floor, I watch the live action, but I always have a corner of my eye on that monitor to make sure that something doesn't catch me off guard.
All right. You've given me plenty of time, but before you go, we're going to do before you go. 4 questions unrelated to anything. You ready?
Oh boy, here we go.
All right. You're maybe my favorite thing you've ever done. And don't take this as an insult because it was awesome.
Oh, I know where we're going. Okay.
You know exactly where we're going. One shining moment. When COVID hit, you made a video and put it on YouTube where you did by yourself alone in your apartment in Atlanta, an entire complete one shining moment. If you haven't seen it at home, go look it up right now. It's not only very clever and funny, it's amazing you did it all when COVID hit all by yourself. But also, you had to buy a truckload of, different schools, hats and shirts and jerseys and what have you. So my first question is, how much money did you spend on doing this video?
I hope the people at Amazon aren't watching this, because I spent a little over $1,500, but hold on. But the most expensive portion of that were the 4 costumes that I bought for mascots. And because they were gently used and they didn't fit right, I returned them to Amazon.
Attaboy.
So, but the shirts that I wore, I was like, I'm not going to return these. And the other things, the headbands, obviously, I kept all of that. But I got a majority of that money back by returning those 4 gently used mascot outfits.
Well worth it then. Well worth it for sure. All right, number 2. I always like to joke around that I want a game show. Even though it's true, I like to bring myself down on that. However, you won a contest of sorts around the same time, right?
So when was yours?
04.
Okay, so mine was 05. Yes. And yours was Dream Job. And, I don't know that you and I haven't talked extensively about this, but I knew what I wanted to do. I was locked in to that show. And so, I knew you obviously long before you knew me. And that show was just, it made me even, I was like, oh, this show is so cool. It made me even hungrier to get into this field. So in 2005, though, I was a junior at Butler University and I was studying broadcasting. And CBS put up this competition. It was called You Call the Action. And essentially, it was put on by Pontiac and CBS, and you could watch a clip from that year's NCAA tournament, dub your voice over it doing the play-by-play, and send it in to CBS. And I saw this, and my friends that I went to school with, they knew what I did. They said, like, oh, man, you got to enter. So I put in several clips, and I believe it was a Kentucky-Michigan State game is the game that I chose. It was an exciting ending in overtime. And I sent in the audio clip, and I felt pretty good about it. And then CBS called. I was in the final 10, and Greg Gumbel was going to review the final 10. And the line that I use, and I don't know why I use this, and I've never used it on air since, is at the end of the exciting play, I was out of breath. I was like, somebody get me an oxygen tank. And that was the line Greg Gumbel said, man, I love that line. I loved your call, and that's why I picked yours. And so I went to St. Louis that year. Illinois played North Carolina, and they had me on the set at halftime. Yeah, so that was kind of, you had Dream Job, which again was much bigger than this, but that was my first break, I would say, in the business.
Yeah, but I didn't get to meet Greg Gumbel.
That's true, but you were in front of millions and whatever. Semantics. So.
Number 3, if you need a laugh, what comedy movie, what stand-up special, what episode of TV are you throwing on?
Woo! Seinfeld's always my go-to on the TV side of things. Now, movies, I'm your classic kid from the 90s. I mean, born in the 80s, but really grew up in the 90s. So your Adam Sandler stuff, your Happy Gilmores, your Billy Madisons, all of those types of movies. And then, I mean, my favorite comedy of all time, though, is Wedding Crashers. That's what takes the cake. So those are some of my go-to. There's comedians. I love Seinfeld. He doesn't do it as much anymore. Comedian that I like that's kind of new is Sebastian Maniscalco.
Sure.
Have you heard him?
Oh, yeah.
There's something about the way he delivers his lines and with his little Italian Northeast accent, it gets me. So he's a new comic that I'm into.
Yeah, he's pretty good. All right, 4th one. Impress me. What's the coolest autograph you have or sports memorabilia you have?
Oh, gosh. I don't really have a lot of autographs. Sports memorabilia. Boy, this is a bad one to ask me because
What about behind you on the wall?
Things. What's that?
There's something behind you on the wall.
Oh, those are every year after the Madden game comes out, they send us a plaque, and it has the disc of the game, who was on the cover, and our name and the role that we played. And so
pretty cool.
Those are the ones that I have, but that doesn't count.
No autograph, even as a kid, you didn't like write to Greg Gumbel a letter or something like that? And
no, I wrote a letter that I still keep to this day. I wrote a letter, and the letter I got in return I keep. It would be tough to keep the letter that I wrote because I didn't send it. But so Skip Carey, Harry Carey's son, was the broadcaster for the Atlanta Braves. And I became a huge, like an unhealthy Braves fan to the point where when they would lose in the playoffs, I would lock myself in my room and not eat dinner. I really did that after the 1993 World Series or NLCS. But anyways, Skip Carey was the voice of the Braves on TBS. And I used to watch every single game in the 90s on TBS. And when I was I was probably 8 years old, I wrote him a letter. And he was my idol. And I wrote him a letter and I said, I'm only 8. I understand I'm young, but I want to get into this field. What do I need to do? And he took the time on official Braves letterhead and wrote back certain things that he thought that I should do to be a professional broadcaster someday. And he has since passed. I've actually connected with his family here in Atlanta since I live here, his son, and been very kind to me. But that is something that I always keep as a reminder of A, why I got into this business, but B, if anybody ever asks me to review their demo tape or talk to them about a career when they're in the spot of being 8 or 9, or even in high school or right out of college, is, hey, pay that forward. Someone took the time to help you, and it's a good thing to do that and pay it forward. So that's something I always hold on to.
Brandon, I've made you speak enough. Somebody get him an oxygen tank. That was lovely, buddy. Thanks for the time, man. We'll see you on Saturday on our air.
And Mike, remember, when I toss to you in the studio and you
doing updates,
we're getting that banner going, baby. We're getting that banner going.
That's when I turn on my Maniscalco. I'll find some bit and shoot it your way.
I love it. Hey, seriously, I always enjoy it, man. You're a good dude, and I really appreciate you having me.
Brandon Gaudin. Told you he was a humble guy. You can hear him be our lead announcer on football all season long, as well as one of our main men's basketball voices this entire winter. My thanks to Brando and to you for listening. From the Big Ten Network in Chicago, I'm Mike Hall. We'll see you next week.